Okay, segregation was the last public admitted ditch effort of the white people in the South to have de facto slavery. They said, okay, we can't legally own black people, but we can create laws and regulations and let organizations like the KKK run free so that black people will know that anything that they do that steps out of line is going to cost them and maybe their families their lives. So they were in fact forced to live as if they were owned. Now, mistreating people like that is seemingly obviously morally wrong. But for those of us who were there, we remember quite clearly they claimed states' rights. They said, we need to stop Washington Big Brother socialism from coming down here and telling us how we can treat our colored folk. If we don't, they're going to be telling us who we can marry, what job we can have. They're going to make people marry goats. Deja vu all over again, all over again. Okay, and women's rights. And I didn't put that at the bottom for any reason. I was in the women's movement and I have learned not to tick off women, which thankfully for us liberals is a lesson the right hasn't learned. Women's rights, that was considered a state right too. The states had, each state had their own laws about what women could and couldn't do. In some states, women had no rights whatsoever. In some, they could own property and have their own money, but only if they had married a rich guy and then he died. But even then, in most cases, if they wanted to do anything with their money or their property, they had to get a man to act for them because they had no legal status. So when the suffragette movement started in the women's rights movement, the right to vote started, a lot of states claimed states' rights. They said, Washington doesn't have any right to come down here and tell us how we treat our women folk. The next thing you know, they're going to be telling us what job we can have, you know, who we can marry. They're going to make us marry goats. Deja vu all over again, all over again, all over again, all over again. So states' rights is a not really very subtle cry, or code word rather, along with big government and socialism, by the right wing that's saying that they want these things back. They are tired of white people not being in charge fully, although pretty much white people run the world as it is, but they want more back, and they want the poor white people, they want that feeling of superiority, and they want to keep their women folk in line. So that's what they mean when they say states' rights. That's what they mean when they say big government. That's what they mean when they say socialism. And for one more small rant here, and this is probably going to mess up, but this is something that can stop all of that. We need, and nobody in Washington right now has the balls to do it, a national elections law, a comprehensive national elections law. We need every state who has an election that affects the entire country, which includes the president, U.S. Senator, and U.S. House of Representatives, to have the exact same election laws, to use the exact same ballots, to use the exact same voting equipment, to have the exact same number of working voting devices in each precinct and county based on population. This would stop all of this voter suppression This would stop all of this intimidation. This would stop the Republicans putting 50 optical scanning machines in a Republican county that only has 1,000 people and putting 5 in a Democratic county that has 50,000 people. And this would stop some Republican appointed toady from deciding who is going to be President of the United States. And for those of you who don't remember correctly, in Florida in 2000, they said they didn't have to do a recount. And it wound up in the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court did not, as so many people think, rule against the recount. They actually said that Florida denying the recount, they didn't have a leg to stand on. But it was a conservative Supreme Court. They knew they couldn't legally rule against a recount. So what they did was they ruled for the recount and then gave an unreasonable amount of time to complete the recount. So they knew that it couldn't get done. So they said, yes, you have to have it, but we're not going to give you time to have it. So a national elections law would stop all of this. Now I'm feeling a whole bunch of rant coming on, so I'm going to stop here and say thank you for listening.